Hi guys, so last time we looked at Pentagon, who were heavily requested. Now another group that have been massively requested on the channel is Monsta X, so we're happy to know that we are covering Monsta X today. Let's go. Okay, so a couple of disclaimers. Firstly, in the comments, a lot of people were telling me they wanted me to do Monsta X with Wonho. I'm fully aware he's just signed an independent label, and he's now going solo, but people wanted him in this video, so I'm going to include him anyway. And also, it's worth saying that Monsta X, while a lot of the vocalists aren't like incredibly exceptional, this is the vocal group, I think, who have the least amount of bad singers or poor singers. Everybody's good to great, and I had a really fun time actually ranking these. These were the ones that I had by far the most fun with because I wasn't fully sure where to put people. I ummed and ahed quite a few times as to what positions were where, and everyone has a really nice R&B leaning voice, so I really enjoyed listening to these voices, hearing everybody's voices and ranking them. So I hope you guys kind of agree, and if not, you see where I'm coming from, but you may have a different order and that is totally fine. But yeah, Monsta X, really interesting vocal unit, and I'm really happy to have done these guys because I found some voices that I now really enjoy. Without further ado, let's get into the Monsta X vocal ranking. Okay, so as weakest singers in the group go, IM is by far the best I've looked at so far. His voice is kind of untapped potential, I feel like, but let's delve in.
하는 사람들 중 난 너만 있으면 돼. 난 강해지고 싶어. 좋아. I wish I could pretend I didn't need ya. So every touch is ooh la la la. Gotta wonder, oh no no. Gotta never ever need you. All I wanna do is see you. 끝까지가 끝인가 보. 나는 이제 돌아서.
Okay, so I really ummed and ahed between the last two places as to who to put where based on a few different things. Now for me, IM's voice is still very good. He's got a deeper baritone voice. He has by far the lowest voice in the group, and he obviously doesn't sing in the higher keys particularly easily, so that's not what his voice is there for. He doesn't suit the songs of Monsta X necessarily because his voice doesn't have that sort of pitch potential. However, what it does do really well is firstly it stays lower than most of the guys, obviously. He implements a bit of a breathier technique when he's in his lower range, like a lot of idol singers do because that's the way they're trained, and that's kind of fine. Occasionally he's a little bit pitchy and a little bit flat. He doesn't sound super comfortable singing this breathy all the time. However, when he stays connected and beefs up his sound a little bit more with his fuller rap tone, he sounds really quite good actually. Unfortunately, when he goes into his higher range, he has a habit of pulling chest voice, which means his sound is really unsustainable and not something he's going to be able to do for very long. So should he lighten those chords a little bit, go into more of a mix, and his voice is going to sound really good because he can belt into these tenor keys and still stay on pitch and sound really nice. However, you can tell his throat's taking a little bit of a beating because he's implementing too much of a grab and putting too much pressure up into that range. Now, as I say, if he utilised more of a mix or lightened his tone or used slightly more light shades with the way that he's singing, his voice would have a much easier time up here. But the fact that it can get into these areas with his deeper tone suggests that potentially and with dynamic range, he has ability to be really good in the future if he focuses more on his singing style than his rapping style. So obviously his voice is naturally deeper, naturally more full, and naturally really good. So yeah, the negatives are mainly his breath support isn't fantastic, he has a habit of pulling chest voice, and his sound is a little bit unsustainable and he's a little bit pitchy at times because he sounds a little bit flat when he's singing with more of a breathy coordination. But positives, he has an interesting range, his dynamics are really strong, and he has a really full big sound that if he worked on he would have great potential. So yeah, he's not a bad singer at all, just kind of untapped potential and doesn't fully know what to do with his voice 100% yet, and he's a little bit shy when he sings, that's kind of obvious. But yeah, I think in terms of what he can do, the sky is the limit. Okay, so in terms of the people that sing kind of the most often, Hyungwon's voice is the least versatile and has the least amount to it. It's still good and interesting and strong, but let's delve into it. Okay, so Hyungwon's main strength is his voice is incredibly consistent. He obviously kind of sings in this one area all the time. His voice isn't hugely dynamic and isn't hugely versatile and doesn't have a lot of colours to it. It's why I've put him this low, because he always sings in this kind of lower chest voice place with a little bit of a breathy coordination. So he's singing in this area that's incredibly comfortable and doesn't really move up or down too much. But because he's in an area where he's really comfortable, his tone is incredibly consistent and sounds the same all of the time. Yes, he doesn't really belt at all or use much of a chest pull or any sort of mix. He occasionally gets into a bit of a head voice now and again, but he does really just stay where he's comfortable. His voice isn't hugely dynamic, it doesn't seem to have a lot of range. Whether that's because the other guys in the group get the higher parts and he doesn't do that, I don't know. To me, it sounds like his voice isn't very comfortable moving away from where it knows. So he stays in this kind of, I'd say, lower to middle place, bit of a breathy coordination, nice and comfortable, nice and groovy, nice and smoky. His voice is pleasant, it's got an interesting timbre and the colours are nice, but they're just not very nuanced and not very varied. And now that isn't always an issue, but to me, having no variety in your vocal delivery kind of can come across a little bit boring at times. So if he kind of had more of a dynamic range, or utilised more of a mix, or kind of did more in the upper echelons of his voice, I would possibly rank him a little bit higher, because the vocal tone that he does have is incredibly consistent, incredibly smooth, and incredibly nice. It's just not very varied, and I haven't really heard too many avenues to his voice, as opposed to everybody else coming up, so I can't really justify any higher than this position. But Hyungwon's voice is nice. It is good, it is decent, it just, there isn't a much to it, really. Okay, so from here on out, everyone's voice is kind of dynamic, has a lot to it, has a nice range, and there's a lot of decent vocalists. To me, of these people, Minhyuk's technique is the least perfect, but let's get into his voice.
I love you all day. I love you always. 찾아와 밤을 새워 괴롭히다. Without force to stay there, I was wrong. No reason to hide what we're feeling inside right now. Baby, I love you, I love you, I love you. I am fine, the only one.
Okay, so I'm going to preface this by saying I think that Minhyuk's voice is really interesting, really nice, and has a lot of potential in things that it can do. So as of right now, he tends to sing with a more forward nasal placement, and his voice kind of sounds really bright and really strong in an upper area, and it's very comfortable in this slightly higher key. His voice is quite delicate, quite soft. As I say, he uses a more nasal placement, which means he kind of uses a lot of facial forward placement and gets kind of sort of stuck in this upper area of his voice. However, when he kind of brings it a little bit lower and adds a little bit more of a chest grab to it, it sounds strong and nice and resonant. It can go off pitch occasionally. His pitch isn't amazing. It does fall off a little bit here and there. And because he generally utilises a much more soft, airy delivery, his voice can kind of sound like it's running out of air or running out of kind of power in onsets and offsets sometimes. However, the fact that he does sing with this more nasal placement means he's very comfortable in this upper key, so the key of Monsta X's music suits his voice perfectly. He never sounds like he's struggling with it, just because he uses a naturally softer, airy delivery and he has kind of a bright tone. He doesn't have much projection. When he's in this upper range, yet it's comfortable and smooth and nice and can move up and down nice and easily. He's got really good head voice as well. When he goes into his falsetto, it's really smooth and really pleasant. He just doesn't have any power, really. He uses a lot of the microphone to get most of the power. His voice doesn't have a lot of oomph to it because he doesn't naturally use much of a chest voice foundation or much of an open, bigger sound. He just kind of stays a bit nasally, a little bit bright, and a little bit kind of forward placed, but lacking the chest grab of another person coming up later. So yeah, his range isn't amazing, but his tones are nice. He's got a very nice vocal tone and very nice vocal colour, and where he places his voice, it kind of gives him an area of his voice where it works really well, up in the higher register. It just doesn't have as much it can do as everybody else coming up, purely because it kind of gets stuck a little bit in that tone, but his voice is light, pleasant, bright, and really nice, and has decent dynamics, just lacks kind of the power potential due to the placement that he uses. Okay, so just once again, I'd like to say that we all wish Wonho the best of luck in his solo career, and yes, he shouldn't have left Monsta X. I'm not really going to wage on that scandal, it's not really my place to do so, But yeah, people wanted me to include him as part of this list, and this is personally where I think he fits, so let's have a look at his voice.
사람이 되어버린
Okay, so Wonho's instrument is really interesting and really varied and versatile and has a lot of avenues it works kind of well in. So he again implements kind of a breathier, softer technique, particularly in his lower range. That's kind of where he sings most of the time, quite breathy, quite soft. Because of that, it's got a nice agility, it's got a really nice vocal colour, and his tone is very pleasant and very nice. And he kind of works in that avenue of his voice really well, really smooth, really R&B, and sounds very nice. As he brings it up, he tends to do one of two things. Either stays really airy and really nice, which gives him an interesting vocal colour that most people just don't sing in, and this area of his voice sounds really comfortable, again, agile, really smooth, and really nice. It doesn't have, like, ultra projection because his voice is naturally quite softer, so when he does add a little bit more power, which is the second way that he sings, it has a bit too much pressure to it sometimes. So because he sings with naturally breathier coordination, as he brings it up into his belts, that he does quite a lot, it sounds like he's forcing it a little bit and his voice doesn't have too many places to go into, which suggests to me he's not utilising much of a chest voice foundation, which means that his mix isn't very robust. It means that his mix is really head dominant and really breathy, which is fine. It means his voice is agile and has a decent colour to it. It just means that he can't get super mega loud with it. So when he does add volume to it, he's pulling chest voice a little bit and it sounds like he's straining a little bit. Now, his tone's still nice up here and it still can be done most of the time and it's really consistent. He just lacks the mix potential and kind of the upper avenue of his voice that a lot of the guys coming up kind of implement. So yeah, basically his voice is soft and nice and agile. It just has a habit of pulling too much chest voice with a breathier coordination, which results in a strange sound, which kind of sounds strained without much area to go into above it. But also he's got a nice falsetto, a nice head voice ability, gets in the avenue of his voice pretty well. He just doesn't have the best mix in the world, which is the only thing that really lets him down, because the rest of his voice is really consistent, really agile, really smooth, and really nice, and suits the R&B tone of Monsta X perfectly. It just lacks that mixed voice due to the lack of chest foundation that he kind of uses with his breathy technique. Okay, so when I was kind of being told to look at Monsta X, a lot of the comments said their main rapper has an insane voice. And yeah, you weren't kidding. Right, let's have a look at Jooheon's voice. It's incredible. I really want to talk about it. So let's have a look.
모든 걸 전부 내려놔서 잃을 게 없는 나야.
I have a feeling this might be the highest a main rapper is ever going to be on a list like this. His voice is really, really captivating and interesting. Okay, so what makes it the way it is? He has a really naturally high voice, first of all, which gives him a bit of an advantage as to what he does. As well as that, he has a really kind of nasty nasal placement when he sings. So what I mean is he kind of sings from here, from the face, and because of that, his voice has a really natural, bright quality to it. It works really well in an upper range. Unlike Minhyuk, who kind of sings a little bit breathier and lighter and can't push his notes too high with too much projection, Jooheon's voice is massive. It's enormous. He has an incredible belt. As well as that, his voice is really suited to R&B, so he has some of the best runs and some of the most agility in this group. He can sing in this upper kind of A4, B4 area really, really easily. He doesn't sound like he's struggling in this area at all. Yes, he's belting and his technique's a little bit rough around the edges because he's bringing up a lot of weight and a lot of chest voice. Because of the natural, nasty placement he uses and the fact that his voice is naturally higher, he can get away with this. I've heard him get up to a C5 when he's covering Park Hyo-shin's Wildflower, and that sounded really strained. That sounded like he didn't have much sustainability, which means that his upper mix in terms of balance isn't perfect, which is why I've put him third. His technique is, as I say, a little bit rough around the edges, but in terms of vocal and dynamic potential, Jooheon's voice is the best in the group, I'd say. His instrument is so bright, so naturally powerful, and has such a height to it that he can really implement this upper style. And if he used more of a balanced mix, his voice would have like unlimited range potential. It'd be really exciting to hear that. But as of right now, he kind of pushes chest a little bit into a really chest-dominant mix. It's heavy, it's full, and it's amazing and really good and really agile, has great runs, and his pitch is really fantastic for a rapper. So yeah, his voice surprised me big time. It's got amazing power, amazing range. His technique could be better, but what he works with right now shows an amazing sound that main rappers shouldn't have access to, but he does. So yeah, he's a fantastic singer and can only get better, really. So yeah, thank you for showing me these guys, because this surprised me big time. Okay, so to me, Shownu has the Monsta X sound down almost perfectly, which is why I've put him second. His technique is really interesting and suits the R&B style perfectly. Let's delve into his voice.
Fire, fire, champion, champion. 예쁘게 피어줘 쓰러져도 절대로 포기는 못해 Let's take our time tonight Girl Four of us on the roof Still we naked Baby let's just kiss Till we naked 언젠가 내가 말했지 사랑하면서 왜 해요 무슨 찰나 또 나의 해답은 풀린 것만 같아 경고할게 화나면 난리나 나만 숨기면 돼
Okay, so Shownu's speaking voice is kind of deep-ish, it's kind of lower, which shows that he's using a very interesting technique to sing the way that he does. Okay, so when he sings in his lower range, again, he sounds kind of lighter, not really that breathy per se, but he sings in a softer, really balanced way, which means that his voice has a lot of agility, his chords aren't being stretched too hard, and they can kind of go up and down, nice and smooth. The R&B delivery with his vocals is really, really consistent and really nice. So his technique in his low range is very good. As he brings his voice up, it sounds like he's putting his tongue a little bit further back. It's got more of a glottal quality to it. It sounds a little bit hootier, but that's a really interesting style, and when he sings in this way, he also has really good agility. His voice can go up and down in pitches really solidly, and he has an R&B style that works incredibly well. Also, because his voice is a bit deeper, when he's getting into these slightly higher places, it doesn't sound massively uncomfortable. There's a tiny bit of a strange quality to it, but that's because he brings his voice a little bit further back, so he's having to try a little bit harder to get up into these areas. But he gets up into these areas really consistently, really well, and he sounds really full and really big here. He has kind of the area of his voice so far that sounds the most relaxed, most comfortable, and most technically consistent in this area of his voice. It's agile here, it's quite big here, it's got a good, nice, solid chest voice foundation, and sounds really strong. strong. He also has an upper mix to a point. He doesn't use it all that much, but he does get into it occasionally, where he lightens his chords, gets into a bit of a higher belt place, and again, it sounds agile here. It sounds like his vocal technique and his consistency still works in exactly the same way, and he knows his voice inside and out and knows exactly what he's doing with it. So his upper mix, while not utilised as much as the next person coming up, he's probably got the best one of everyone so far, and he kind of stays big with it and connected. He just doesn't have that many times that he uses it. Also, his passaggio navigation is beautiful. As an R&B leaning singer, you generally do have a really good passaggio. And when he kind of goes from his low notes, his mixed notes, and his head voice, they all sound really smooth, really nice, and have a really beautiful, pleasant vocal colour to them. So yeah, Shownu's voice isn't dynamically the biggest, it hasn't got the biggest range per se, but I think so far, technically, he is the best, and suits the Monsta X R&B singing style by far the best with his kind of smokier, lighter, really agile delivery. Okay, so nobody else could possibly have went number one. Monsta X's main vocalist Kihyun's voice is really, really good and has an awful lot to it, which I'd like to delve into. But yeah, he's number one by far, and let's just listen to him sing.
사랑해요 아직도 그대를 봐와서 난 저기 많아 마치 공주를 지키는 게임 같아 단단한 저 태어나 처음에 Underneath the chandelier we're dancing all love. One and only beauty 아름다워 너를 뗄 수가 없어 전부인 나를 잃고 난 뒤 미련이 만든 나의 환상이 나를 더 올가매요 내게서 멀게 해.
Okay, so Kihyun's voice has by far the most to it. Firstly, he has a tenor vocal, of course, because Monsta X singing a slightly naturally higher key, but it's not that mega higher key, he just has the most to it. He has the biggest ad-lib potential due to the areas of voice he can get into, but we'll get into that. So his voice mainly stays really full, really connected, and really nice, but he never sounds like he's at his top note. He always sounds like he's got a space to move into. He always stays really connected with a good chest voice in a really balanced, mixed place, sometimes a bit more chest dominant, sometimes a little bit more head dominant, and in lots of different songs he utilises both of these styles really well. In songs like Hero, the highest parts are quite belted and kind of in the middle of the fourth octave, which Kihyun does perfectly and really well. In songs like Follow, he goes up into much more of a balanced mix and sings really higher notes. So his voice has the most avenues it works in really, really, really well. It stays connected and big in the fourth octave, and like it's got a really good strong tenor vocal, or he can balance his mix a lot more, put more head placement into it, and sing in these really blaring high forward places. But yeah, he always stays open and forward and full, and live he's incredibly consistent because when he lightens his vocal tone and puts more of a head placement in it, it sounds so big, so reliable, and so very good indeed. He also has, again, incredible passaggio navigation. He can get into his upper mix, into his head voice, and it sounds very smooth, very nice, and very good. Now, while his voice isn't as R&B leaning as some of the other guys in the group, his vocal tone and vocal colour still suits this style of music really well, and his voice is kind of agile. It's just more of a power vocal. It's got the most avenues to it. As I say, it can sing full and heavy, or it can sing light and relaxed, or it can sing very balanced in a very, very strong middle place. So yeah, his voice has the most areas it works in very well. His technique is super consistent. He's incredibly reliable live. Never sounds like he's straining. Always sounds like his placement is balanced and perfect. And yeah, Kihyun's voice is absolutely exceptional. And there's a reason why he's the main vocalist, because his voice is the most consistent and most technically proficient. Okay guys, thank you very much for recommending Monsta X. They were really fun to get to know and really fun to order. Next time, my comment section's been blowing up with ATs, so they're going to be the next guys that I'm going to be doing. But for this video, thank you very much for watching, and see you later.